Bring completions to all your incompletes right now. If you haven't, I'm serious, you live in a connected universe. I don't want to sound new age here, but sometimes, we in the church think we have a corner on all unique and innovative insights on the spirit realm. There's some people that are actually challenging us to think differently in some areas. For instance, everything's connected whether you like it or not. You're living in an ever-shrinking world. The geography of nations is no longer relevant. I've got my hip iPhone buzzing with messages from the Middle East and Asia while I'm sitting here. You know why? I'm linked together. Technology has created a smaller world out of a larger one. Spheres are overlapping. Economic spheres, we are as much rubbing up against China every day of our life. You have no idea. You've got American corporations now that are influenced, owned by Chinese money. The world is overlapping in places you haven't seen it. In your house, clear out clutter. Just watch. Just take it as a prophetic word. For God to show up in a fresh way, you have to create the space for his emergence to be recognized. You can't add God in the crammed borders of what your agenda was last year. You almost have to take a look at your calendar, take a look at your physical space, take a look at your closets for some of you, take a look at your trunks of your car, your desk drawers. And here's what's interesting. When you bring completion to the incompletes of your past, when you discard and make space for what you no longer need, something new always shows up to fill the vacuum. And so 10-10, this particular year is the year of ordinal perfection. It's when God wants to order your conversation, order your steps, order your direction. And here's the hard part. What do you do when your whole life you've been anticipating the prophetic culmination of a purpose in a certain way, and you find out that that's not the way it's going to happen? This is the irony of being prophetic people. You have a superior perception of the future, but are clueless as to what it looks like when it actually shows up. Do you see the conundrum with this? This is like, you're birthing the Messiah, but, of all the times to have to take a census, and have to be on the road, we should be home, and then there's no room in the inn. What kind of supernatural preparation is this? We can't even find a place to birth a baby. But you see, that contradiction that's the life of faith. And what I want to say to you is Joseph has a dream that he's going to be a ruler in Egypt. He has no idea. He is clueless as to the context of the fulfillment of that very dream. He knows he's called to be a ruler. The problem is, it's going to be in a geography he didn't expect, in a language he didn't understand, with people he didn't want to be with. Welcome to prophetic fulfillment. And that's at a level 10. See, if you're at a level 7, you're in a foreign geography where you don't know the language and you still don't know what's going on at the end of your life. But at least Joseph knew one thing. God was with him. Fascinating to me that the last moment I see where Joseph is really exerting his ingenuity and his gifting and his power of persuasion, and it's failing. You know when that is? When he's trying to convince the baker or the butler to get him out of a prison. He's trying to persuade somebody to get him out of prison because he is prisoner of an unjust confinement to his destiny. That's what he thinks. And if he succeeded, imagine what an oy vey mess that would have been. He would have gone home, which would have been just the delight of his brothers to see his face again, as you can imagine. Explained to his father how these brothers have been lying to him, which would have been great for father-son relationships. And it's always good to have that level of unity when you go into a national food shortage. Because, unity is important for the blessing of God. There would have been division in the household, strife, and then a famine. That wouldn't have been the appropriate place for Joseph to lead. But Joseph, in his heart, wanted to go back to the context of what he thought the prophetic fulfillment looked like. And as a prophetic community, part of this level 10-10 ordinal perfection thing is learning to hold lightly the context of the fulfillment of your destiny so that you can put it on the altar along with all the other empty space you're creating so that God can show up and bring clarity to what he really wants to do. And here's the good news. Nothing is wasted because all that you've been through up until now has been preparation for a greater game than the one you thought you were invited to play in. That's all. Joseph had a big, God does more and abundant than we ask or think. He doesn't show up with less. So the good news is Your future might not look exactly like you thought it was going to look, because it's going to look better. The bad news is it isn't going to look much like what you thought it was going to look like. Now, the journey in that adjustment is the journey of presence, because Joseph knew that God was with him. See, it's like, I am amazed at this. But you ever notice how people dichotomize experiences? Like, you could dichotomize the worship. Well, that was great worship. Or some people weren't really maybe experiencing the worship the way that they could have. And some people show up after the worship starts, like they're getting their coffee and having conversation, and they kind of come out when if the speaker's interesting. If not, they stay back there and keep talking. That's why I like to have a scan of who's back there right now, just so I can build my offense capacity for 2010. But here's the interesting thing. If you stop and relook at this, these things are all connected. What God is trying to say is presence is a major key to the dynamic of fulfilling practical purpose in the next season. There's some reason the church doesn't do both these things well. I find the people that are the most spiritual are frequently the most irrelevant. And that's not to say that I prefer to be around them a lot of times. I mean, I've got my soaking group, my intercession group, my worship group, my revelation comparison group. And I just love those people that hang around those lofty heights because they have the air and the breath and the scent of heaven upon them. The challenge is they're really slow when it comes to making the practical decisions that meaningfully take territory. And I understand why. Because you have to engage earth. And earth by its nature. In this world, you will have tribulations. They try to stay out of the world as much as possible. They build a whole theology about not being worldly so that they don't have to be exposed to all the tribulation. Then they have a theology to escape the tribulation in the event that it shows up. On the other hand, you got these other people, and these are really, I love them. They're a little fatiguing at times, but these are the people that are engaged in the world, and they're working day and night. They're working, and they have the smell of smoke rather than the scent of heaven. Engines need to be oiled, and their life is squeaky and loud, and horns are honking. And when I get around them, I get caught into the vortex of their activity. And boy, if they're selling something, and I'm getting always some kind of spiel at me with, endorsements and this event and that event, And it's like, oh, get away from me. I want to go back up to the lofty heights. But here's the reality. The people that are going to make it big in the next season, the level 10-10 players, are the people who will be like David. Know how to integrate, or like Joseph, know how to integrate the discerning of and cultivation of God's presence to such a degree and in such a way that they can carry that presence into the invasion of spheres in the natural.